A while ago, I received my GP39-2 models from Atlas. While they did come with sound from the factory, I still like to have working beacons on my engines. In this video, I'll show you how to make the required modifications. The model itself has the typical detail quality you can expect from Atlas. The shell comes with a frame-mounted bell molded to the bottom of the walkway. Be careful with that though, as it breaks off easily. One of my two engines is missing the bell already, and I don't know how and when that happened. Underneath the shell is the updated frame Atlas has been using for the last couple of years, with wired power connections from the trucks to the frame instead of the copper wipers of older model generations. At least my two models were massively over-lubricated to the point that there was oil all over the frame. The decoder is sitting on top of the frame as usual, but can easily be slid out of the frame without a need to take the frame halves apart. Atlas has also stopped using the weird foam pad that I encountered in the GP30 model from a few years ago. A note from future me: since the contacts to the speaker and the motor press against contact pads on the bottom of the decoder board, it is a good idea to make sure that they are high enough above the black plastic strip that is insulating the decoder board from the frame. If they are not high enough, it can result in weird behavior where the prime mover revs up with the speed steps, but the motor won't run or the sound might cut out sporadically. Sliding the decoder board back into the notches on the frame is a bit finicky, but can be done easily enough, again without tools and without disassembling the frame halves. The cap assembly has also got an update, with a light conductor running all the way between the headlights and the LEDs on the decoder board and a black plastic shield underneath. This does a really good job at supplying light to the headlight while at the same time blocking light from leaking into the cab. Unfortunately, it's also sitting right in the spot where I need to mount an LED for the beacon, so I needed to resort to the old-fashioned way of cutting the light conductor short and gluing an LED to the light conductor for the headlight. After cutting the light conductor as short as I could without damaging the number boards, I carefully filed a notch into the light conductor with a half-round file to get as much room as possible to mount an LED into the cab roof to illuminate the beacon. Since I also needed room on top of the cab roof for the beacon, the horn needed to be relocated. On the prototype, the horn was mounted a bit off to the engineer's side of the cab as well. On one of my models, the horn was glued into the mounting holes in the cab roof, so I had to cut it off. On the other model, I could just gently pull it out of the mounting holes without any glue visible at all. In any case, these plastic molded horns are very fragile and break easily, so it's always good to be very careful when handling them. After removing the horns, I cut the remaining bits sticking out of the mounting holes flush on the model where the horn was glued in place and used UV cured glue to fill the mounting holes on the model where the horn was easy to remove. The next step then was gluing the replacement LED to the light conductor. I like to use pre-wired neutral white SMD LEDs in an 0805 housing. Gluing the LEDs with CA glue can be a bit finicky, but is not really a problem with a bit of patience. Paying attention to the orientation of the LED, or more to the point, the orientation of the connection wires, is also important. I glued the LED in place with the wires pointing down, so I wouldn't run into problems when putting the light conductor back into the cab assembly. The next step was drilling a hole into the cab roof for the beacon and gluing it into place with CA glue. I like to use SMD LEDs in an 0603 housing. They are smaller and have less light output than the LEDs I use for the headlights and are a good fit for this application. After this, I put the light conductor back into place and painted the backside of the LEDs and the light conductor with black paint, so there wouldn't be any light leaking into the cab later on. When the black paint was dry, I secured the wires with Kapton tape and placed the cap back onto the shell before wiring the LEDs to the decoder board. The decoder board comes with pre-mounted LEDs not just for the rear and front headlights, but also for the function outputs AUX1 and AUX2. Fortunately, a kind soul over at the Railwire forums documented the polarity, solder pads and resistor values for the decoder board used in this model. I've put a link to the thread down in the description. Before I could attach the wires of the new LEDs to the decoder board, I had to remove the LEDs already installed on the board. This way I could just reuse the pre-installed resistors. Usually I'd use 1 kilo-ohm resistors, but the values of the ones already on the board were close enough. I removed the LEDs from the decoder board by heating up both sides of the LEDs and then carefully pushing them off the solder pads. Then I added a generous amount of new solder to the pads and attached the wires of the new LEDs to the corresponding pads. When looking at the decoder board from the middle to the end, the pad for the anode is always on the right side on this model. Since the anode wires on the pre-wired LEDs are red, the red wires needed to go to the right-hand pads and the black wires needed to be attached to the ground pad on the left-hand side. After attaching the wires to the decoder, I placed Kapton tape over the solder joints in an attempt to provide a little bit of strain relief, and then placed the decoder back onto the frame. I also placed Kapton tape on top of the decoder board to protect against short circuits should the thin insulation of the wires to the LEDs ever fail. Then I could put the shell back on, and after adding some details and a couple of layers of weathering, the models look like this. I have also uploaded a small sound demo. It's linked in the description below. I'm quite happy how everything turned out, and I hope you found this video helpful. See you next time.